Welcome to Pillow Talk Dreams, where every night becomes a story and every story leads you to peace. If you love calm voices, gentle journeys, and stories that help you drift into dreams, then don't forget to subscribe and let your nights be a little softer. Now close your eyes and let the story begin. Tonight, we travel deep into the heart of Tennessee, where one of the most terrifying true hauntings in American history took place. A haunting witnessed by families, neighbors, soldiers, even townspeople who swore they heard the voice of a witch speak from the darkness. This is not just folklore. This is not just a scary story. These events were documented, feared, and remembered for over 200 years. So relax, turn down the lights, and let me guide you into the Bell Witch haunting. The people of Adams, Tennessee liked to say that their town was too small for secrets. A narrow dirt road ran through the middle of it. A few farms stretched lazily into the distance, and the nearest neighbor was always close enough to hear a horse trot by. But in the autumn of 1817, when the leaves turned red like fading embers, something arrived that no one dared to speak about aloud. No one except the Bell family. John Bell had lived in the settlement for years, building his farm with calloused hands and quiet patience. His land was rich, his home was warm, and laughter filled the rooms every evening. His wife Lucy was gentle in voice and strong in spirit. Their children, big, loud, happy, ran through the yard with muddy boots and wild imaginations. Life was peaceful, until the night the whisper first came. It was long past midnight when John Bell opened his eyes. A faint sound floated through the hallway, too soft to be footsteps, too steady to be wind. He lay still, listening, his breath caught halfway in his throat. S-C-R-R-R-R. S-C-R-R-R-R, S-C-R-R-R-R. It was the unmistakable sound of something dragging. Slow, careful, moving across the wooden floorboards outside his bedroom door. John sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Maybe it was one of the kids having a nightmare. Maybe the dog. Maybe the house settling from the cold air. S-C-R-R-R-R, S-C-R-R-R-R, no. This sounded weight to it, intent, as if something heavy was being pulled by invisible hands. John rose quietly, not wanting to wake Lucy. He stepped into the hallway, feeling the chill that always came before dawn. A dim lantern glowed from below the stairs, casting long, twisted shadows up the walls. The dragging sound stopped. "Who's there?" he called softly. Silence answered him. He walked a few steps forward, listening for any sign of movement. The house, usually so warm and familiar, suddenly felt different, like he'd stepped into the wrong home entirely. Then came the whisper, not from the stairs, not from the hallway, but from right behind him. "John!" The voice was breathy, thin, as though it came from someone whose lips were no more than inches from his ear. He spun around. No one was there, only the flickering lantern light and the soft rustling of the wind outside the windows. John's breath quickened, but he forced himself to remain calm. He checked each room, one by one. The children slept soundly. The doors were locked. The animals outside made no unusual sounds. Everything looked untouched. And yet he couldn't shake the cold, crawling sensation along the back of his neck. By dawn, the dragging sound returned, this time coming from the barn. John stepped outside just as the sun touched the tops of the trees, and his boots sank into the dew-soaked grass. The barn door hung wide open. Inside, the animals were restless, shifting nervously in their stalls. A horse stamped its hoof, snorting as if it sensed something unnatural. Then John saw it. On the ground, carved deeply into the dirt floor of the barn, was a single line. Not hoof marks, not human footprints, but the long, unmistakable trail of something that had been dragged, something heavy, something that should not have been able to move on its own. The marks stretched from the far wall all the way to John's feet, then stopped as if whatever made it had vanished into thin air. A cold wind blew across the doorway, carrying a faint whisper with it, a whisper that froze John Bell in place. "I'm here." That was the beginning. No one knew it then, no one could have known that this was the first quiet warning of a haunting that would grow into legend, a presence that would terrorize the Bell family for years, a force that would speak, strike, laugh, and torment. And in time, the entire country would learn its name, the Bell Witch. For the next few days, John Bell tried to convince himself that the dragging sound, the whisper, the strange mark in the barn, all of it had been a trick of exhaustion. Farming was hard work, long hours, endless tasks. Maybe his mind had simply been too tired, but deep down he knew better. Something had changed in the Bell household. It began quietly, small sounds at night, tapping, scratching, soft breaths where no one should be breathing. One evening, Lucy Bell was sewing in the living room when she heard what sounded like fingernails dragging along the wall behind her. She turned quickly, expecting to see one of the children. No one was there. "Did any of you hear that?" she asked. Her daughter Betsy looked up from her book. "Hear what, Mama?" Lucy opened her mouth to answer. But just then the sound came again. Scritch, scritch, scritch. This time, it moved from one wall to the next, circling the room like a predator searching for a weak point. Betsy froze, her eyes wide. "Mama, what is that?" Lucy forced a smile she did not feel. "I'm sure it's just the mice outside," she whispered. But mice didn't scratch in perfect circles. Mice didn't follow the sound of her voice. Mice didn't whisper. And later that night, when the family gathered for supper, Lucy noticed something else, something she'd been too distracted to see before. Betsy looked pale, not sickly pale, but frightened pale. Her hands shook as she tried to hold her spoon steady. "Betsy, what's wrong?" Lucy finally asked. The little girl hesitated, her lips trembled. "It's nothing," she whispered. John set down his fork. "Young lady, tell us." Betsy swallowed hard. I've been hearing things," she said. "In my bedroom at night." Lucy's heart tightened. "What kind of things?" Betsy lifted her eyes, round, dark, terrified. "Someone calling my name." The room fell silent. Even the fireplace seemed to stop crackling. "Betsy," John said carefully, "how long has this been happening?" "2 nights now," she whispered. "The first time I thought it was one of the boys trying to scare me, but the second time, the voice was right next to my bed." Her voice cracked, and I felt something pull my blanket. Lucy immediately reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "Sweetheart, it's all right. You probably dreamed it." "No," Betsy shook her head. "I was awake. I know I was awake." John tried to keep his voice steady, even though a cold dread wrapped around his chest. "Did you see anyone?" "No," Betsy whispered, "but I heard breathing." The boys, who had been listening quietly, exchanged wide-eyed looks. Lucy squeezed her daughter's trembling fingers. "Tonight, you can sleep in my room. We'll keep the lantern lit." Betsy nodded, but it was clear she found little comfort in the promise. That night, Lucy kept watch. Betsy slept beside her, clutching her mother's arm. The lantern glowed softly on the bedside table, casting warm light through the room. Hours passed. Nothing happened. The silence was almost soothing, until it wasn't. At around 2 in the morning, Lucy's breath caught in her throat. A sound rose from the corner of the room. Not a scratch, not a tap, but a low, steady murmur, like someone speaking from behind the wall. Lucy sat upright, staring toward the shadows. The voice grew louder. "There you are." Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might burst. Instinctively, she grabbed Betsy and held her tightly. The voice drifted across the room, deepening, shaping itself into words no normal human voice could whisper so smoothly. "I see you," Lucy tried to scream, but her throat locked. Beside her, Betsy whimpered in her sleep. The voice moved closer, closer, until it hovered just above the bed. Then, in a breath colder than winter air, "Sweet little Betsy," Lucy gasped and reached for the lantern. But just as her fingers touched it, the flame snapped out, plunging the room into darkness. Betsy jolted awake with a terrified cry. "Mama!" Lucy clutched her daughter, her own body shaking uncontrollably. And from the shadow-filled darkness surrounding their bed, a second whisper came, soft, slow, unmistakably pleased. "Don't worry, I'm only watching." The room froze. The night held its breath, and Lucy Bell knew with absolute certainty that whatever had entered their home was no longer content just to whisper. It wanted more. The morning after the lantern went out, Lucy Bell said nothing to the children. She didn't want to frighten them more, but she could not hide it from her husband. As the sunlight crept through the kitchen window, John noticed the way her hands trembled while pouring water. Her eyes were heavy, her breath shallow. "Lucy," he said softly, "tell me." She tried to answer, but her voice cracked. "It spoke our daughter's name. It was in the room with us. John, this is not a dream. Something is here." John felt the ground shift beneath him. For months he had tried to keep calm, to protect his family by refusing to believe the unexplainable. But now, the evidence was piling up like a weight on his chest. Dragging footsteps, scratches around the house, whispers, blankets pulled in the night. And now a voice that knew their names. He swallowed hard. "We will not live in fear," he said. "This is our home." Lucy looked at him with a sadness that cut deep. "I'm afraid fear is already living with us." That night, John decided to keep watch himself. He refused to sleep. He sat in the living room with a lantern on the table and his rifle across his lap. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the mantel clock. Every few minutes, he strained his ears. Nothing. Midnight passed, then 1 o'clock. By 2 o'clock, fatigue began to drag at his eyelids. His chin dipped forward just for a second. "T-OK." The sound jerked him awake. He sat up, gripping the rifle. The noise came again. T-OK slow. Heavy, like someone tapping the front door with their knuckle. He quietly rose and stepped toward the entrance. At the third knock, T-OK. A chill swept through the room so cold it felt like the air froze in his lungs. The house went silent. John placed his hand on the door handle. "Who's there?" he demanded. No answer. He pulled the door open. The porch was empty. But the night air was wrong, deathly still, as if the entire world held its breath. He stepped outside and scanned the yard. Nothing. No footsteps. No intruders, no wind, only a suffocating stillness. He turned back toward the house and froze. The front door, wide open a moment ago, was now slowly swinging shut, as if something inside wanted him out. "Lucy," John called inside, no answer. He took a step forward, the door closed fully, click. The latch slid into place on its own. John's heart hammered. He grabbed the handle and it refused to move. He shook it harder. "Lucy, boys, Betsy." Suddenly the latch released, the door flew open and John stumbled inside. "Lucy," but he stopped, because every member of his family was standing in the hallway, pale and trembling. "We heard it," Lucy whispered, "all of us." "What did you hear?" John asked, though he already knew. Betsy answered with a quivering voice. "The knocks, and then," she pointed toward the ceiling. And from above them in the attic, a slow, deliberate dragging sound began to creep across the boards. "SCRA, SCRA, SCRA." Betsy covered her ears. The boys clung to their mother. Lucy stared upward with tears filling her eyes. John tightened his grip on his rifle. "We stay together," he said, "no matter what happens." But even as he said it, the sound grew louder, closer, moving toward the spot directly above them. SCRAing, then silence. A silence more terrifying than the noise. Lucy whispered, "John, don't move." But before he could respond, something above them stomped the floor with such force that plaster rained down like dust. Thud. They all jumped, and then thud again, this time harder. The boards groaned. A third time thud, so violent that the lamp flickered and nearly fell. Then laughter, soft at first. A low, raspy, vicious laugh slipping down through the ceiling beams. Not human, not natural, not from any throat they could imagine. It drifted around them like smoke, whispering between its choked breaths. "Did you hear me knock?" The laughter rose into a shrill, angry shriek, then cut off instantly. Silence, but it was not over, because in the middle of that silence, every candle, every lantern, every flame in the entire house blew out at once. The Bell family stood together in absolute darkness, and somewhere in that darkness, something else breathed with them. The Bell family did not sleep for the rest of that night. They huddled together in the living room until dawn, waiting, listening, every shifting shadow feeling like a threat, every gust of cold air like a warning. When the sun finally rose, the house seemed peaceful again. But it was the kind of peace that sits before a storm. That evening, John Bell's eldest son, John Jr., came by after hearing rumors from neighbors, rumors that the Bells were having trouble in the night. He tried to laugh it off when he arrived. Tapping, scratching, whispers in the dark. Probably a raccoon, he joked. But he saw the fear in his family's faces, and the bruised look under Lucy's eyes. "Tell me everything," he said more seriously. So John and Lucy recounted the knocks, the dragging in the attic, the voice whispering Betsy's name. John Jr.'s expression shifted from disbelief to concern. Then, half angry, half afraid, he said, "Whatever it is, it won't touch you again. Not while I'm here." He didn't know how wrong he was. That night the shadow returned. The first sign was the temperature dropping, suddenly, violently, as if the warmth had been sucked from the house. Lucy wrapped a quilt around Betsy. John and John Jr. moved the lantern closer. The flame shivered. Betsy whispered, "Mama, it's here." Before anyone could respond, tap, tap, tap. Behind Betsy's chair, John Jr. spun around. Nothing was there. Then the tapping shifted. Tap, 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 now on the opposite wall. Then the ceiling. Then the floor, moving faster, more chaotic, circling them like an animal stalking prey. "It's playing with us," John Jr. whispered. The tapping stopped so suddenly that the silence stabbed the room. Betsy held her breath. Lucy clung to her daughter's shoulders. And then, a cold, invisible hand grabbed the back of Betsy's dress and yanked her backward. She screamed. Lucy lunged and caught her just in time. "Let go of her," Lucy cried, pulling her daughter close. But the thing in the room wasn't done. Betsy was ripped from her mother's arms with terrifying force. She was pulled across the wooden floor as though dragged by something they couldn't see. Her shoes scraped the boards. Her nails clawed at the floor. She shrieked, "Mama, help me!" Lucy and John Jr. sprinted after her. John Jr. grabbed her arm and pulled with all his strength, and for a moment it felt like something else was pulling from the other side. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. Cold fingers wrapped around Betsy's ankles. "John," Lucy cried, "please don't let go." "I'm not," he shouted through clenched teeth. With a final heave, he pulled Betsy free. She collapsed into her mother's lap, sobbing uncontrollably. Lucy pressed kisses into her daughter's hair. "It's all right, baby. Mama has you. Mama's here." But the entity was not done. Not nearly. Slowly, deliberately, the The lantern's flame began twisting sideways as though blown by breath neither man nor wind could have created. Then, click, the flame vanished. Darkness swallowed the room. In the pitch-black silence, something moved. Something slow, deliberate, crawling across the floorboards. Betsy buried her face in Lucy's chest, trembling violently. John Bell whispered into the dark, "What do you want from us?" The answer came immediately. Not from the attic, not from the walls, but from right in the center of the room. A rasping voice, low, gravelly, dripping with malice, "To torment you until the last of you breaks." Lucy clutched her daughter tighter. John Jr. slowly backed toward the fireplace, reaching for Flint. The voice let out a wet, choking laugh. Then thump! Something hit John Jr. in the back. He gasped and stumbled forward. Thump! Another invisible blow. He grunted, bracing himself. Thump! A third hit so powerful he fell to his knees. Lucy screamed his name. John Jr. spat blood on the floor. "You coward!" he shouted into the darkness. "Show yourself." The answer was a whisper brushing his left ear. "I already have." A cold, bony finger slid across the back of his neck. John Jr. jerked away, clawing at empty air, trembling. Silence fell again. The house seemed to wait, watching. And then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the presence withdrew. The air warmed, the darkness eased. The oppressive weight vanished. John lit the lantern with shaking hands. Its warm glow filled the room again. But none of them felt warmth. Not anymore. Because now they understood something with terrifying clarity. The entity inside their home wasn't just angry. It was intelligent. It was powerful. And it had no intention of leaving. Whatever haunted the Bell family had only just begun. The next morning, the Bells tried to pretend that life was normal. They tried to eat breakfast. They tried to talk as if last night had been a nightmare. But every sound, every creak, every whisper of wind made them flinch. Betsy was the quietest. She sat at the table, hands wrapped tightly around a cup of warm milk, staring blankly at the wall. Her eyes empty, almost hollow. Lucy rubbed her daughter's shoulder gently. "You're safe now," she whispered. But Betsy didn't answer, because no part of her believed it. Later that afternoon, as John Jr. prepared to leave to fetch help from a neighbor, he paused in the doorway and said to his parents, "If this spirit wants trouble, then fine. But something tells me it's not after all of us." Lucy frowned. "What do you mean?" John Jr. hesitated. Then he looked at Betsy. "It keeps going after her," he said quietly. "Again and again." Lucy's face paled. John Bell's jaw tightened. "Are you saying," he whispered, "that this thing wants our daughter?" John Jr. nodded. "I think it's focused on her." Betsy's small voice rose behind them. "It talks to me," she whispered. They turned. "What?" Lucy stepped closer. "Sweetheart, what did you say?" Betsy stared at the floor. "It talks to me sometimes." John dropped his pipe. Lucy grabbed the table for support. "Betsy," she said, voice shaking, "what does it say?" The girl swallowed hard. "Sometimes when I'm alone, it whispers things to me." John Bell forced himself to take a slow breath. "What kind of things?" Betsy's lip trembled. "It tells me what I'm doing, what I'm thinking. It tells me things about people, things it shouldn't know." Lucy knelt beside her. "You must tell us exactly what it said." Betsy shook as she spoke. "It told me Miss Mary down the road lost her wedding ring and that she cried in the barn so no one would see." Lucy froze. That had happened 2 days ago. No one knew except Mary's husband. "And it told me something else." John moved closer. "What, sweetheart?" Betsy lifted her gaze, eyes shining with fear. "It told me that Daddy is going to die." Lucy gasped. John Jr. turned ghost pale. John Bell staggered backward. But Betsy continued, voice cracking. "It said Daddy's already sick and it's going to finish him." Lucy grabbed her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "Don't listen to it, don't listen," Betsy sobbed into her mother's chest. John Bell stood frozen, trembling, the color drained from his face. He had been hiding something. He had been sick recently. Sharp pains in his mouth, a strange tightening in his throat, spells of dizziness he couldn't explain. Had the spirit caused it, or did it simply know? That night, as the Bells tried to rest, something new happened. Something that changed everything they understood about the haunting. For the first time, the voice spoke clearly out loud where everyone could hear it. John and Lucy were lying in bed when a faint whisper drifted across the room. Then it grew louder, sharper, more human. "You cannot stop me." Lucy bolted upright. John grabbed her hand. "Lucy," he whispered, "stay still." The voice grew stronger, filling the entire room with a cold vibration. "You cannot save your daughter." Lucy's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around John's hand. Then the voice changed tone, becoming calm, almost casual. "Nor can you save John Bell." A long, eerie silence. Then, with slow, deliberate malice, "For his days are numbered." Lucy screamed. John felt his entire body shiver violently. But the voice continued, almost amused. "Oh, Lucy, he kept secrets from you. Pain in his jaw, pain in his throat. Pain he tried to hide, but I saw it. I see everything." Lucy shook her head violently. "Stop, stop." The voice ignored her. "He will not survive the winter." John felt his legs weaken. "No," Lucy whispered. "No, you're lying." The spirit let out a low, chilling laugh. "We shall see." The room went silent. John fell back onto the bed, sweat soaking his shirt, breath shallow. Lucy held him, sobbing into his shoulder. But the voice's final words echoed in both their minds. "I know your future because I am part of it." The next morning, something even more terrifying happened. As Lucy walked into the kitchen, she froze. Someone or something had carved a message into the wooden table. Not scratched, not etched, carved deeply. One sentence, a promise, a threat, a prophecy. "He belongs to me." Lucy collapsed to her knees, because now the Bell family understood the truth. The spirit haunting them wasn't just trying to scare them. It was planning something. Something worse, something final. And it had already chosen its victim, John Bell. Word travels fast in small towns. And in Red River, Tennessee, nothing traveled faster than fear. By the end of the week, whispers about the strange happenings at the Bell home had already spread through every church pew, every market stall, every neighbor's porch. Some people claimed the Bells were cursing. Some claimed it was punishment. Others said it was the devil himself. But none of them knew the truth. None of them understood the power living in that house. Late one afternoon, John Bell walked into the yard to feed the animals. He moved slowly now, older in a matter of days than in the last 10 years. His steps were stiff, his breathing shallow. Lucy watched from the window. He didn't know she was watching, but she saw everything. The way he touched his throat, the way he winced each time he swallowed, the way he paused, gripping the fence for balance. He was getting worse. And the spirit's words, "He belongs to me," echoed in her mind like a curse she could not shake. The children avoided being alone. They stayed close to Lucy at all times. Even during the day, they felt watched, and they were, because the spirit no longer confined itself to the walls of the Bell home. It began following them. The first incident happened when Lucy went to the well to draw water. Betsy stayed close, holding onto her skirt, but as Lucy leaned over the stone well, the wind shifted. Not a natural breeze, a cold rush, sharp, aggressive, like someone pushing past her. Then Lucy heard it, a faint whisper drifting up from the dark hole of the well. "Betsy," Lucy jerked back so sharply she nearly fell. "Stay behind me," she yelled, pulling her daughter away. She stared down into the silent black water. Nothing moved, but the whisper had been real, too real. That evening, the Bells were visited by a neighbor, James Johnston, a strong, religious man who had heard the rumors and came to offer help. He brought a Bible and a firm voice. "I'll spend the night," he said. "We'll see if anything dares show itself." John and Lucy exchanged a look. They had heard that confidence before, but the entity had never been challenged by someone from outside the family. Maybe, just maybe, it would make a difference. That night, everyone gathered in the living room. James opened the Bible and began reading aloud. His voice filled the room, steady, grounded, powerful. For the first time in weeks, the Bells felt something close to safety. But then the air changed. The lantern flame flickered. The temperature dropped. James continued reading louder. The spirit waited. Then it struck. Thump. A heavy blow slammed the back of James's chair, nearly knocking him forward. He stumbled, catching himself on the table. But he did not stop reading. The spirit struck again. Thump, thump, 2 quick hits, one to his shoulder, one to his back. James shouted a prayer. The Bells cried out. Then smack. An invisible force slapped him so hard across the face that his head snapped sideways. His wife screamed. Lucy grabbed Betsy. John Jr. ran to stand between them and the unseen attacker. But James stood tall, breath-shaking, eyes wide. "Show yourself," he shouted. "If you have power, show it." The room shook. The windows rattled, and then a woman's voice echoed from the ceiling, smooth and cruel. "I have shown enough." Everyone froze. It was the first time the spirit spoke like a person, clearly, intentionally, no longer distorted or whispering. Now it sounded almost human. James tried to continue reading, but the voice interrupted again. "Your book cannot save them." Lucy whimpered. John Bell clenched his fists. Betsy buried her face in her mother's dress. And then the voice lowered into a venomous hiss. "He is mine. I have waited years for him." James finally understood. This wasn't a wandering ghost. This wasn't a restless spirit. This was something old, something powerful, something with purpose. He slammed the Bible shut. "John," he whispered, "this thing is no spirit. It is a witch, an evil one." The house went dead silent. Then from the darkness, drifting like a snake sliding across stone, came the entity's answer. "Thank you," someone finally said my name. James's blood ran cold. The voice lingered in the rafters. "The witch is here." A violent wind rushed through the room, papers flying, chairs toppling, candles extinguishing before any of them could scream. The presence vanished. The house fell silent. No footsteps, no breathing, no whisper, gone, but the Bells knew better. The witch hadn't left. She was simply waiting. And now that she had revealed her voice, she intended to speak much, much more. The winter air grew sharper as night pressed heavily against the Bell farmhouse. The trees outside rattled like brittle bones, and the moon, thin and pale, seemed to watch the land with an eerie stillness. Elizabeth Bell lay awake, staring into the darkness, aware of the familiar weight in the room, a presence, the witch, lingering unseen. It started with a faint tapping on the wooden wall. Tap, tap, tap. Then a scrape, slow and deliberate, as though nails were dragging along the floorboards. Elizabeth sat upright, clutching her blanket. The room grew colder. Her breath fogged in the air. "Elizabeth," the voice whispered. A low, unsettling murmur, neither fully male nor female, more like many voices speaking at once, weaving through the shadows. Elizabeth trembled. "What do you want?" The whisper answered softly, almost lovingly. "I warned you. Your family does not listen." Footsteps echoed across the hall, running, frantic. John Bell Jr. burst into the room, breathless. "Did you hear that?" Before Elizabeth could respond, the witch's laughter, shrill and sharp, filled the air. It bounced off the walls, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Then the house shook. A violent force slammed the doors open. Dishes rattled. The very beams groaned as if the witch were twisting the entire structure in her invisible grasp. From downstairs, their mother screamed. The siblings rushed toward the staircase, but halfway down, the witch's voice boomed through the house. I will not be stopped. Not by prayers, not by faith, not by any mortal. At the bottom of the stairs, their father, John Bel Essar, was kneeling on the floor, gripping his head. His face was pale, his eyes unfocused. His lips moved, whispering words only he could hear. Elizabeth knelt beside him. Father, Father. He didn't respond. Instead, he cried out in pain as if something were clawing inside his skull. The witch spoke again, but this time her voice was horribly clear, just one voice, cold and venomous. His time is nearly done. John Jr. shouted into the air, leave him alone. The witch laughed, mocking, cruel. Your father cannot escape me, I chose him long ago. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the noise stopped. The shaking ceased. The air warmed. The presence faded. The house fell into silence. Elizabeth touched her father's shoulder. His breathing was uneven. Sweat dripped down his face. Father, what is happening to you? She asked softly. He opened his eyes, weak and frightened. She won't let me go, he whispered. I see her even when she's not here. In my sleep, in my waking hours, always watching. John Jr. set his jaw. We're going to fight this. We're not giving up. But deep down, all three of them knew the truth. The witch wasn't just haunting the Bell family. She was claiming them piece by piece. And John Bel Essar was slipping further into her grasp with each passing day. The morning after the witch's violent outburst, the Bell farmhouse felt hollow, like all warmth had drained out during the night. John Bel Essar remained in bed, his strength fading more rapidly than anyone could explain. His eyes darted nervously around the room as though he sensed something the others couldn't see. The family gathered at the breakfast table, but no one touched their food. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Mary Bell, his wife, whispered, "We must seek help, someone beyond this town." But John Jr. shook his head. This witch isn't something that can be stopped by men. She knows everything we do before we do it. As if in agreement, a sudden gust of icy wind swept through the house and extinguished the hearth flame. Elizabeth gasped. She's here. A low humming sound began, like a woman singing a lullaby, but twisted, broken. It drifted through the rooms, brushing against their ears in a disjointed melody that filled every corner of the house. Then the witch spoke, her voice smooth and haunting. Do not seek help. There is no help for the doomed. John Essar whimpered and covered his ears. Please stop. The witch ignored him, continuing. His time is coming, sooner than you think. The family huddled together, trying to stay calm as the humming faded. But a heavy, sickening dread lingered long after the voice disappeared. A visit from the neighbors later that day. The neighbors, Richard Powell, their longtime friend, and several townspeople, arrived after hearing rumors of screams and shaking during the night. When they entered the house, the witch immediately made her presence known. A plate lifted off the kitchen shelf and hurled across the room, shattering at Richard's feet. Then the witch's voice echoed, "Welcome, Richard. Come to watch him die." Everyone froze. Richard stepped forward bravely. "Why torment this family? What do you gain?" The witch chuckled. "Revenge, and I will have it." Elizabeth felt her breath catch. Revenge for what? What did we ever do? But the witch fell silent. No explanation, no clue, only that word, revenge, left floating in the air like a curse. John Bell's condition worsens by evening. John Bel Essar could barely lift his head from the pillow. His hands trembled violently. His voice grew faint. Mary held his hand, her voice shaking. "John, please speak to us," he whispered. "She won't let me rest. I dream of her, I wake to her, she is everywhere." Elizabeth sat beside him, wiping tears from her eyes. "We won't let her hurt you." But as night settled once more over Red River, the witch returned stronger than ever. The walls groaned, the beds shook, doors slammed open and shut as if a storm raged inside the house. And then, in a voice filled with triumph, the witch declared, "The end for John Bell is near." Her laughter echoed long into the night. The Bell family, powerless, could only cling to each other and pray, though they already knew prayers were useless against something so ancient, so cold, so determined. The winter of 1820 settled cold and unforgiving over Red River, but the Bell farmhouse felt even colder, its walls echoing with the presence of something unnatural. John Bell S.R.'s condition had deteriorated so quickly that the entire town whispered in fear. Even the bravest men refused to visit after sundown. Inside the dim bedroom, John lay motionless, his breath shallow and uneven. A candle flickered weakly beside him, the flame bending as if something unseen breathed against it. Mary Bell knelt beside her husband's bed, clutching his hand. Elizabeth stood on the opposite side, tears streaming down her face. "Father, please stay with us," she whispered. John's eyes fluttered open, cloudy with pain and exhaustion. She won't let me," he murmured. Before anyone could respond, the room temperature dropped violently. The witch was here. The witch's final warning, a raspy whisper slithered through the room. "Tonight it ends." Elizabeth screamed as the candle extinguished on its own. The entire house plunged into darkness. Doors slammed. The floorboards groaned. Then a deep guttural growl echoed through the walls, followed by the witch's chilling laughter. Mary clutched Elizabeth tightly. "Please, leave us." But the witch only whispered back, "I promised vengeance, and I always keep my promises." The discovery of the mysterious vial the next morning, after a night filled with shrieks and shaking furniture, John Jr. went to check on his father, only to find him unresponsive. His skin was pale, his breathing too slow. "Mother," he shouted. "Something's wrong." The family rushed in. Beside John Bell's pillow lay a small vial containing a strange dark liquid, something none of them recognized. "What is that?" Elizabeth whispered. John Jr. picked it up carefully, examining it. "I've never seen anything like this." Then the witch's voice echoed loudly through the house. "I gave him a dose last night." The family froze in horror. "She killed him," Mary whispered. "She poisoned him." The death of John Bell by late afternoon, John Bell S.R. took his last breath. The moment he passed, a deafening scream shook the farmhouse so violently that dishes fell from the shelves. The witch shrieked. Finally, the voice carried through the fields, the trees, the entire Bell property, announcing her victory. No human voice had ever sounded so full of triumph and hatred. The witch attends the funeral at the funeral, attended by nearly the entire Red River community. The witch made her final appearance. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, her mocking voice rang through the cemetery. "I'll be back in 7 years." Terrified, people scattered. No one dared stay near the grave except the Bell family, who stood frozen in shock. Her return and the unanswered mystery. Exactly 7 years later, the witch did return, but only briefly. She appeared to John Bell Jr. in the dead of night, speaking calmly this time. "I will come again," she whispered. "Not soon, but someday." And then she vanished. Never again did anyone hear her voice with the same intensity. But the Bell Witch legend lived on, growing year after year, generation after generation. To this day, people claim that strange sounds, voices, and shadows still linger on the old Bell property. Some say the witch was never finished. Some say she waits. And some say she never left. The end, thank you for staying with me until the very end of this haunting journey. The Bell Witch remains one of the most chilling true stories in American history, and many believe her presence never fully disappeared. If you enjoyed this long, cinematic sleep narration, please like, subscribe, and comment to support more true horror stories on this channel. Tell me below which haunting should I cover next. Good night and sleep safely.
you.